For 10 years, Airbnb has promised a travel revolution, but in 2025, a series of cracks appeared simultaneously, from declining bookings and plummeting profits to hosts giving up and users switching back to hotels. We want to know what's really going on, and the deeper you dig, the more terrifying the answers become. Hundreds of customer comments describe the Airbnb experience as a gamble. Some people are charged a cleaning fee even after cleaning the entire house themselves. Someone entered the damp room with a broken AC and nails sticking out of the floor. Some people face fraudulent hosts, hidden cameras, or house rules that are concealed until the last minute. But this is what Airbnb will never admit. They've lost their biggest advantage, low prices. And when prices increase but quality decreases, the entire model begins to collapse. In this video, you'll see the full picture, from when Airbnb was a miracle of travel to when it became an out-of-control empire. To understand why millions of Americans are turning away at this moment, we must go back to when Airbnb was still a beautiful dream, so beautiful that it made the entire hotel industry fear. And that story began with 3 cheap air mattresses placed in the middle of the living room. In 2008, the market plummeted and everyone tightened their belts. In San Francisco, 3 young men couldn't afford their rent. In the middle of the night, they came up with a solution that sounded like a joke. Buy a few 10 air mattresses, inflate them, and let the guests sleep temporarily in the living room. They named it Air Bed and Breakfast, a rustic, cheap, and spontaneous version of a bed and breakfast. But something unexpected happened. Users loved it immediately. Why? Because they are exhausted after the crisis. A living room that costs half a cup of Starbucks per hour suddenly becomes a rare bargain. From an investigative perspective, this is the first turning point. Airbnb didn't win through technology, but by exploiting market pain. Just 2 years after its launch, Airbnb surpassed 1 million bookings, equivalent to filling over 2,700 medium-sized hotels in a year. By 2012, that number had jumped to 12 million, a rate that even major airlines had to be wary of. Investment funds can't ignore this. 2010 invested $7 million USD. A few months later, 100 million, then 200 million. And by 2016, 1 billion USD, equivalent to the construction budget for 8 international 5-star resorts. The peak was the 2014 World Cup in Rio. Over 100,000 guests stayed in Airbnb rentals, enough to fill an entire central district. At this point, Airbnb was no longer just a startup. It was a cultural phenomenon, a revolution in travel. Before its collapse, Airbnb was strangely perfect. It's 40–60% cheaper than a hotel. No hidden fees, no requirements, no annoying host. The feeling of being welcomed, something industrial hotels cannot create. It makes visitors feel like they're not just renting a place to sleep, but opening the door to another life, native life, real experiences, real people. And that's why we have to ask ourselves, what caused such a beautiful model to become completely distorted? What did Airbnb lose on its way to becoming an empire? And from what point do you think Airbnb started to deviate from its original course? The answer will be in the next part. Negative turning point, when the experience begins to free fall. Every empire has its first moment of cracking. With Airbnb, that rift doesn't come from technical issues or stronger competitors. It started with very small details, so small that even Airbnb didn't notice. But when put together, they form a series of breaking points that have turned off millions of Americans. This is the leaked map of the first cracks. If I had to choose the clearest sign of impending collapse, it would be the cleaning fee. From 2021 to 2024, this fee quietly increased by 20–40%, as if someone were constantly inflating it month by month. One user wrote, "I cleaned the whole house, washed the towels, wiped the kitchen, vacuumed, but they still charged me a $250 cleaning fee. What am I paying for?" It's not hard to understand why the phrase "paying to clean someone else's house" went viral on TikTok and Reddit. In consumer psychology, this is called an emotional tipping point. Users are very willing to pay more when the service is good, but they will be extremely angry if they pay a lot of money for something they don't receive. The cleaning fee is the first spark of betrayal of trust. It turned the feeling of being welcomed like a local into being exploited like seasonal workers. And this is just the beginning. If the cleaning fee is the first dumbbell, then hidden fees are the second punch. A disturbing phenomenon is occurring across the United States. Airbnb room prices are displayed as $100 per night, but when you go to pay, they become $280, $300 due to all sorts of extra fees, service fees, cleaning fees, management fees, amenity fees, and so on. Journalists liken this phenomenon to a hidden museum fee. Every time you click to pay, it reveals an unwelcome surprise. User description: feeling cheated is the worst feeling of all bad feelings. The danger is, once trust is broken, users don't argue. They silently leave. And Airbnb's sales began to stagnate right from this period. In its golden age, Airbnb was loved for its freedom. You stepped into someone's home, lived like them, and no one bothered you. But then the law appeared. It's not a city law, but it's the house rules of each host, as long as dorm regulations. Some house rule books are up to 15-30 pages thick, with requirements such as vacuum the entire living room, wash all the dishes, take the trash out to the street at the scheduled collection time, strip the bed sheets, gather the towels, and place them in the designated area. Do not turn on the air conditioner below 25 Celsius. Do not shower for longer than 10 minutes. A bitter commentator remarked, "Nobody wants to be a paying guest and a maid." This is the biggest emotional breaking point. Users feel they are being treated like employees, not customers. And what is tourism for in the first place? To rest, to be served. No one gets paid for overtime. As Airbnb expanded too quickly, hundreds of thousands of new hosts flooded the platform. But the problem is, not everyone has the skills to provide service. Many hosts respond to guests with unfriendly phrases: "This isn't a hotel. Turn around. Toilet paper is not included in the service. If you want more towels, wash your old ones yourself." Some people even entered the guest house without prior notice. Some people argue, cancel their rooms at the last minute, or remain silent when there's a problem. In the hospitality industry, unprofessional attitudes are a cost. The cost of losing customers, reputation, and trust. Every bad experience is a hole in the Airbnb ship. And by 2023, 2024, those holes were large enough for water to flood in. All these breaking points, cleaning fees, hidden fees, annoying house rules, amateur hosts, lead to an important investigative conclusion. Airbnb doesn't just raise prices. Airbnb devalues them. And when value decreases but costs increase, user behavior will change very quickly and very coldly. Where do you think Airbnb's biggest breaking point lies? Cleaning fee? Hidden fee? Are the hosts too annoying? Comment so we can analyze it further. So what happens when trust is damaged for too long? Why did Americans abandon Airbnb together in just a few years? And what makes the hotel, a seemingly outdated model, make such a strong comeback? In every major brand collapse, there's always a moment when the growth curve no longer reflects true value. With Airbnb, that moment wasn't when revenue stagnated, but when user trust was eroded beyond repair. This is the underlying reason, something that no financial statement can capture. At its peak, Airbnb was 40–60% cheaper than hotels, making it a no-brainer choice. But then users realized a cold truth. 3 days on Airbnb will cost you around $650–700 USD. Meanwhile, for 3 days at a 4-star hotel, you only spend $350–450 USD and also get breakfast included. Just like a store that used to sell coffee suddenly raising the price to $9 without improving quality, users don't get angry immediately. They'll just go buy it somewhere else. This is the key thing about the US market. Americans accept risk when prices are low, but they stopped as soon as the risk increased and the price rose. Airbnb suddenly became the most expensive but not the best product, an extremely dangerous position in consumer psychology. And the collapse of trust doesn't come from a single scandal. It comes from thousands of small stories, hidden cameras and clocks, smoke detectors, or room corners. The floor had nails sticking out, causing the customer to need stitches. The air conditioner is broken, but the host is not responding. He came into the house without warning, in case of disagreement leading to last-minute cancellation. Each incident is a drop in the bucket. And when the glass overflowed, users began to ask a very frightening question: am I really safe staying in a stranger's home? With a hotel, the risk is almost zero. There's security, public cameras, and a 24/7 front desk. But with Airbnb, visitors describe it with a very blunt phrase. Every Airbnb stay is a roll of the dice. Every time you book a room, it's like rolling the dice. If you have to gamble with safety while traveling, the game is wrong from the start. Faith doesn't collapse because of a single event. Trust collapsed because the system treated customers with weariness. Hosts ask guests to clean the house as if they were working a second shift. The rules are not transparent, only revealed at check-in. Customer support is much slower than the hotels. Disputes are too troublesome, and refunds are not easy. The attitude of some hosts makes guests feel sarcastic and judged. When users feel they are treated as a burden rather than a valued guest, they don't complain. They silently leave. And when customers leave en masse, the market only calls it by one name: a crisis of trust. In the hospitality industry, trust is currency. The hotel has existed for over 100 years because they sell stability. Airbnb once won because they sold difference. But when the difference becomes a risk and the price is on par with a hotel, users choose the safer option. From here, the big question arises. What happens when Americans lose faith for long enough? Is Airbnb's collapse temporary or a sign of a new cycle in tourism? We will move on to the next section, the collapse. Airbnb 2025 and cracks in the market. A collapse never begins with a big bang. It started with small cracks and then suddenly collapsed when everything aligned. With Airbnb, 2025 is the year when all negative indicators simultaneously plummet, exposing a crisis the company can no longer hide. In their golden age, many hosts boasted incomes of $100,000 per year, but by 2025, that number will disappear as if it never existed. Survey data from multiple states show that hundreds of Airbnbs are being sold simultaneously, with many owners losing $50,000, $150,000, and in some cases, even more. In some neighborhoods, there were times when 74 Airbnb listings appeared on the market simultaneously, as if an entire Airbnb town had been abandoned overnight. Cabins that once operated at 85–95% capacity are now empty and cold, with no bookings. What is the most familiar image of the year 2025? The houses that once shone with tourist lights are now completely dark, and for sale signs are planted as densely as a forest of utility poles. If even those who profit from Airbnb are having to flee, what does that say about the health of the market? U.S. authorities cannot ignore the situation where residential areas are being turned into disguised hotels, and they reacted in the strongest way possible. In New York City, the new regulations have almost blocked 90% of apartment listings. Meanwhile, Los Angeles, San Diego, Denver, Chicago impose limits on the number of days, units, permit fees, and require periodic inspections. Some areas even completely ban short-term rentals. The reason is very simple. Airbnb is seen as a factor driving up housing prices and distorting local communities. When the law tightened, the host couldn't pivot the model and had to sell off. When the host sells off, the price drops. When prices fall, the market is chaotic. This is the perfect domino effect for a collapse. What few people talk about is that Airbnb also created a self-inflicted wound. In the old model, the host pays a 3% fee and the guest pays 14–16%. But from the end of 2024, hosts will have to pay 15.5% while guests will not. It sounds beneficial for the customer, but what actually happens? Hosts are simultaneously raising prices to compensate for fees. As prices increase, customers leave, Airbnb loses more trust. This is the perfect example of the saying, a small change in the system can break the entire market's confidence. Think about it. When prices and fees increase, but the quality remains the same, does the user still have a reason to choose Airbnb? Bookings are down. Profits are plummeting. The host gave up. The city is tightening the laws. Airbnb prices are no longer cheap. The guest returned to the hotel. If collapse had a flavor, the flavor of Airbnb in 2025 would be a combination of rising prices, declining quality, and stricter regulations. But when Airbnb weakens, what happens to the tourism industry? Will hotels, a seemingly outdated model, truly make a comeback and be more powerful than before? The collapse of Airbnb in 2025 did not create a gap in the market. It created a vacuum. And like all vacuums in economics, it was filled immediately. The surprise is, the returning force isn't a new tech startup, not another home sharing platform, but the traditional hotel industry itself, a model that seemed outdated but is rising stronger than ever. It's like a boxer who was underestimated for 10 years, now steps into the ring and throws the perfect counterpunch. While Airbnb is often described as a roll of the dice with each booking, hotels offer a consistent experience like a Swiss watch. You know exactly what you're going to get. A clean room, new towel, the bed is made every day, 24/7 service, no surprises, no loopholes, no 15-page rulebook. In consumer psychology, stability, not price, is what brings customers back, and the hotel understands that better than anyone. One of the most prominent comments when comparing hotels and Airbnb is this: "In a hotel, I just need to step outside one morning. When I returned, everything was as tidy as new." It's the feeling of being cared for, something Airbnb can't provide in its amateur host model. Instead of a chore list, the hotel gives you fresh bed sheets, new towel, the trash is being processed, the bathroom is sparkling clean. While Airbnb makes you feel like you're working a second job, hotels make you feel like a real vacation. Not only that, but hotel guests are also served free breakfast. It sounds simple, but a free breakfast has immense economic value. For a family of 3 to 4 people, breakfast at a restaurant can cost $40, $70 per day, while the hotel offers it for free or at a very low cost. What about Airbnb? You have to go to the market, cook, wash dishes. In other words, you pay to serve yourself. The hotel made an offer that Airbnb couldn't compete with. Let us take care of everything. A key factor in the Airbnb crisis is the feeling of being blindsided. $100 on the app, but it jumps to $300 at checkout. The hotel has almost no hidden fees. The price shown is also the price you pay. This transparency makes a big difference, especially when users feel Airbnb is playing invoice magic tricks. When trust is broken, the hotel becomes the safest haven. Not only that, but the hotel has something Airbnb can never catch up with: a points ecosystem. Each time they stay, guests can earn points to redeem for free rooms, upgrade room category, received a dining voucher as a gift, use the airport lounge, service discount. This bonus point works like a reverse magnet. Once they get used to it, guests almost never return to Airbnb. Think about it. One side is offering you free room upgrade points. One side makes you wash the sheets and take out the trash. Who will you choose? Why is it said that Airbnb is unintentionally providing free advertising for hotels? Because every factor that makes Airbnb lose points, from hidden fees and house rules to unprofessional hosts, highlights what hotels do well: transparency, professional, seamless, no risk. Don't worry, the worse Airbnb gets, the more valuable hotels will seem to guess. That is the greatest paradox of this collapse. What do you think is the strongest reason customers return to a hotel? Stability, price, or the feeling of being served? Let's share so we can delve deeper. But the more important question is, can Airbnb come back? Or is this a sign of a cycle ending? Proof that technology cannot replace the hospitality industry. After all the data, accounts, and investigative clues, one thing is clear: Airbnb is not collapsing due to outdated technology. Airbnb collapsed because it lost what made it loved in the first place: the trust of travelers. From 3 hopeful air mattresses to a multi-billion-dollar empire, and then becoming a product that millions of Americans no longer want to touch. This isn't just the story of one company, but a lesson for an entire industry. When you stop listening to your customers, they will quietly leave you. And when trust falls, all empires can crumble. Today, hotels are making a comeback, not because they are newer, but because they still offer what Airbnb inadvertently lost: stability, transparency, and the feeling of being treated like a real guest. But the question this investigation wants to leave behind isn't just, where did Airbnb fail? But also, what can Airbnb learn from its own mistakes to come back? And do you, the viewer, still trust Airbnb? Please share your perspective in the comments section. Have you ever given up on Airbnb? What made you choose a hotel over Airbnb? Do you think the home sharing model still has a future? I want to hear your story because you are the one who is continuing the next part of this investigation. If you enjoy deep analysis videos and storytelling in this documentary style, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Each of your subscriptions gives me more motivation to create higher quality stories. Not sensationalist, not cheap, but truly helpful and worth watching. The entire video content is based on public data, user testimonials, and market analysis. The video is not intended to personally attack individuals or organizations, nor to negatively impact any business. It is purely for the purpose of analysis, commentary, and education. Audiences should consider and compare additional information before making their financial or travel decisions. Thank you for staying with me until the end. See you again in the next videos.